Would you ever threaten to buy an entire hospital just to save a stranger's child? He did. And that moment, caught on a blurry phone camera at 3 a.m., would ignite a wildfire across the internet. A billionaire tech mogul, once known for his silence and his sorrow, storming into an emergency room with a burning baby in his arms, and a warning that chilled everyone who heard it. Treat him now, or I'll own this place by morning. But what the world didn't see was the moment that came before the quiet plea from a rain-soaked girl in a faded coat whispering at his table, "May I have your leftovers, sir?" Nor did they know the baby in her arms would change his life more than all his millions ever had. This isn't a love story, at least not the kind you think. It's a story about what happens when grief collides with grace, and when one tiny smile, just a spoonful of mashed potatoes, tears open a heart-long thought dead. So stay with us, because by the time you hear what really happened that night and everything that followed, you just might believe in second chances again. Ethan Blake's breath fogged the rim of his wine glass, while rain hissed against the tall windows of Willow and Vine, the most coveted table in Seattle, if you had the money or the ghost to sit there. 4 years earlier, Ethan had celebrated Elena's birthday at that very linen-draped corner. Tonight he faced her empty chair again, conjuring memories like a seance, her laugh rising over the string quartet, their daughter Chloe sneaking olives from his plate. The waitstaff knew not to disturb him. They slipped past, eyes lowered, as if the silence around him were sacred and fragile. He cut his filet mignon once, twice, but never lifted the fork. In the chandelier's flare, he looked less like a billionaire than a statue carved from regret. Outside, lightning backlit the clouds and rattled the streetcar lines, setting the entire restaurant on edge. That was when a whisper broke the hush so cleanly it felt like a pane of glass cracking. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" The voice came from just beyond the lilies that shielded Ethan's table. He glanced up slowly, as though afraid the sound might shatter if he moved too fast and saw her. 19, maybe 20. Rain pasted her dark hair to her cheeks. Her thrift store coat oozed water onto the parquet. But her spine was straight, her eyes dark and certain, and in her arms a baby swaddled in a threadbare blanket let out a faint, impatient whimper. "I'm not asking for money," she added, enunciating every word so the room couldn't mistake desperation for begging. "Just the food. For him." Cutlery stilled midair. A hedge fund manager at the next table muttered about security. A socialite lifted her phone, ready to stream humiliation for clicks. A waiter scurried forward, towing authority like a shield. Ethan lifted one finger. The waiter froze. "What's his name?" Ethan asked, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. "Liam," the young woman replied. "He's 8 months, Liam." The name kicked inside Ethan's chest like a second heartbeat. He pushed his untouched plate across the table. The steak's aroma unfurled into the air, richer than any perfume. The woman's expression didn't flicker. Instead, she reached into a canvas bag, removed a fraying cloth napkin, and wrapped the meal with the precision of gift-wrapping porcelain. Then she knelt. On the polished floor beneath, light meant for crystal and caviar, she balanced Liam in one arm, blew gently across a spoonful of mashed potatoes, and delivered it to his expectant mouth. The baby's lips parted, his gums pressed against the spoon, and when the taste registered, he issued a radiant, gap-toothed grin so bright it collapsed Ethan's carefully erected walls. Something hot stung his eyes. It wasn't pity. It was awe at the fierceness with which a mother could turn humiliation into a quiet act of grace. Around them, murmurs fermented into judgment. Someone sneered. Someone else recorded. The pianist faltered, mid-chord lost. Yet the woman Grace Lopez, Ethan would learn, kept her focus on her son, as if the entire universe fit within the curve of his cheek. When Liam's belly rounded under the blanket, Grace bundled the scraps, tightened the cloth, and tucked it away for later. She drew the blanket to Liam's chin, brushed a raindrop from his forehead, then rose. Only then did she look Ethan fully in the eyes. "Thank you," she said, voice low but firm. No shame, no apology. A statement of simple, unbreakable dignity. Ethan's pulse hammered as she turned toward the exit. Raindrops on the glass doors refracted the streetlights, fragmenting her silhouette into prisms. Something inside him, grief, duty, terror, of feeling alive again, ignited. He threw a crumpled bill on the table, ignored the staff's startled calls, and strode outside. Seattle's night slapped him with cold rain. Grace was already half a block ahead, strides brisk, cradling Liam beneath her coat. Ethan followed, not close enough to alarm her, but near enough to keep them in sight. They wove through Pioneer Square's alleys until neon dissolved into industrial dark. At the rusted chain link of Old Harbor Lot, Grace ducked inside. Ethan hesitated at the curb. The lot was a graveyard of abandoned vehicles, metal husks, rusting under moss. Grace threaded between them until she reached a navy sedan whose rear window was patched with cardboard. She opened the back door and slipped inside. Moments later, a small solar lantern flickered alive, casting amber across rain-fog glass. Ethan's throat tightened. He killed his headlights and rolled in just far enough to see. Grace laid Liam on a pile of folded coats, hummed a lullaby, "You are my sunshine," every syllable quivering with stubborn hope, and smoothed the blanket over his tiny fists. The baby gazed up at her, cooed, then drifted into sleep. Ethan had built empires by recognizing patterns, predicting human needs before people voiced them. But he had never predicted this, that a baby's mashed potato smile could resurrect a dead man's capacity for wonder. In his mind, Elena's voice surfaced, "Do something that matters, Ethan. Make the world softer." He stepped out of the car, thinking only to offer them a hotel, a meal, something. Yet as he approached, a sliver of laminated cardstock, taped to the sedan's rear quarter panel, caught the lantern's glow. Water streaked across it, but a name shone clear through the drizzle: Elena Blake Memorial Scholarship. Next to it, a faded photo of a younger Grace receiving a certificate, her smile identical to the one that had once made Ethan's wife suggest she could be our daughter's study partner someday. Shock chilled him deeper than the rain. Had Elena known Grace, had their lives brushed once before tragedy ripped his family apart? The coincidence felt enormous, or perhaps inevitable, as if grief itself had orchestrated this moment. Inside the sedan, Liam stirred. Grace shifted her lone pair of shoes, set neatly beside her like soldiers at rest. She murmured something Ethan couldn't hear, her profile etched in lantern light, half shadow, half fierce devotion. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, his driver asking if he was safe. The screen's glow splashed across his soaked cufflinks, but Ethan ignored it. He could retreat to his penthouse and pretend none of this existed. Or he could walk forward, knock on the car door, and let the next words change 3 lives forever. And for the first time since a highway took Elena and Chloe away, Ethan Blake found himself stepping toward life instead of away from pain. We'll pause here, but the story is just beginning. Would you have followed Grace into the darkness or turned back to your warm apartment? Do you believe a single act of kindness can truly rewrite a future? If this glimpse moved you, please tap the heart and like the video so we can continue the journey together. Right now, a gust of wind slammed the car door behind Ethan as he stepped from the darkness into the cone of light spilling out of Grace's sedan. She startled instinctively, shielding Liam with her body until he raised both hands, a silent surrender. "I'm not here to take anything," he said, breath misting, "only to give you a way out of this rain." Grace's eyes flicked to the puddles forming beneath Ethan's $1,000 shoes, then back to his face. "Rain is the least of my problems." Ethan knelt so the lantern's glow fell evenly across them. A hotel 2 weeks. Paid in full. No strings. Please let me do at least that. Silence stretched. Rain ticked on metal roofs like the countdown of a clock neither of them could see. Finally, Grace gave a single exhausted nod. Ethan exhaled as if he'd been holding his breath for 4 years, which in a way he had. By sunrise, Grace and Liam were settled in a small clean room at the Seaview Inn. Ethan never stepped beyond the threshold. He placed the key on the desk along with a note that read, "Only for Liam." Then he retreated into the hall, closing the door on the faint smell of disinfectant and the softer sound of Grace humming, "You Are My Sunshine," while she unpacked. That became his ritual. Each dawn before Seattle's fog lifted, Ethan parked outside Seaview, leaving a new parcel at room 12B, formula diapers, a cheap teddy bear, once even a second-hand laptop with the sticker of a coding boot camp still on the lid. He never signed a single note yet. Grace always seemed to know where the kindness came from. She never thanked him aloud. Her trust showed in the way she no longer flinched when footsteps paused outside her door. The 7th night broke the pattern. Liam had been cranky all afternoon, cheeks flushed, tiny fists batting the air. Grace pressed kiss after desperate kiss to his forehead, each hotter than the last. By 9, his skin seared beneath her palm. She soaked towels, whispered prayers, but the fever only climbed. When his breathing turned shallow, panic finally tore past her pride. She opened her phone and scrolled to the only message thread that mattered, 2 texts from Ethan, nothing more, each ending with, "Let me know if you need anything." Her fingers trembled over the screen. Need anything felt enormous. She typed 2 words, "Help us." She hit send. 6 minutes later, headlights slashed across the Seaview's brick facade. Ethan's black SUV fishtailed to a stop, and he sprinted toward Grace, hoodie, dark with rain eyes, fierce. Neither spoke. She simply handed him Liam, a bundle of heat and weak whimpers, and followed barefoot into the storm. Harborview Medical Center loomed ahead, emergency entrance blazing neon red. Inside, fluorescent lights pooled over plastic chairs and linoleum floors. The waiting line twisted like a tired serpent. Behind the counter, a receptionist looked up with practiced detachment. "He's burning up," Grace pleaded, voice cracking. "Please, he's 8 months old. Do you have insurance?" the woman asked. Grace opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Ethan stepped forward, words low and surgical. "Treat him. Now. Bill me later." He tossed a titanium credit card on the counter. The receptionist barely glanced at it. "Sir, policy requires," Ethan's voice turned arctic. "If you finish that sentence, I'll buy this hospital before dawn and turn your desk into a flower pot. Get a doctor." The threat snapped through the ER like a live wire. Nurses materialized, a gurney rolled in, and Liam disappeared behind swinging doors. Grace swayed. Ethan caught her elbow. For the first time, she let herself lean on him, shoulders shaking in silent sobs that smelled of baby lotion and fear. Hours crawled by beneath harsh ceiling lights. Grace sat forward, elbows on knees, while Ethan stood a sentinel, motionless, except for the nervous flex of his jaw. At 3 a.m., a nurse emerged. "He's stable," she said. "The fever's broken. We'll keep him overnight, but your son is going to be fine." Your son. The words hit Ethan like a jolt he wasn't ready for, yet didn't want to resist. Grace collapsed against the wall, relief so violent it stole her breath. Ethan eased her into a chair, then paced, trying to outwalk his racing pulse. That was when a phone chimed, some stranger's camera flash across the room, aimed straight at them. In the age of midnight gossip blogs, privacy was a fairy tale. One frame, a billionaire in a soaked hoodie cradling a girl half his age. Another, Grace's face swollen from tears, Ethan's hand braced on her back. By dawn, those images would ricochet across the internet, every headline nastier than the last. Ethan's own phone buzzed at 4 a.m. board meeting. Emergency call. His CFO's text glowed, stock diving. Sell-side analysts demanding comment. "You're the story, Ethan." For the first time in his career, Ethan Blake didn't care about the market. He cared about a sleeping child behind sterile glass, and the woman now dozing upright, her cheek resting on the heel of her hand. Yet he knew the world's spotlight would crash down on them by sunrise, and when it did, Grace would be painted gold digger, opportunist, charity case, anything but the warrior he had witnessed. He opened his notes, app thumb hovering. Every PR firm in Seattle would tell him to deny, deflect, distract. Instead, he drafted 4 raw sentences straight from the fault line, still cracking open inside him. "I lost my family. I thought my heart was buried with them. Then a young mother asked for leftovers, and her baby's smile reminded me I'm alive. I will not hide from that miracle." He saved the draft knowing it might cost him his empire. But if the price of protecting Grace and Liam was everything he owned, he would pay it twice. Ethan glanced at the hallway clock, 5:12 a.m. He had less than 2 hours to decide whether to face the cameras or run from them. Grace stirred, eyes fluttering open. Their gazes met, an unspoken question passing between them. What happens when daylight exposes the truth? We'll pause here, but the storm is far from over. Would you step into the spotlight and defend strangers who changed your life overnight, or would you vanish to protect them from the glare? Do you think Ethan's confession will redeem him or destroy everything he's built? Tap the heart and like the video so we can unravel the fallout together. Right now, the first sunbeams were still weak when Ethan walked into the conference room at Blake Innovations. His board sat in a semicircle of tailored suits, every eye trained on the viral photo projected behind him. Ethan, drenched in rain, cradling a young woman whose face was streaked with tears. Stocks had slipped 8% overnight. Polite voices sharpened. "You have 48 hours to fix this narrative," the chairman said, stabbing a finger at the screen, "or we'll remove you for cause." Ethan set a folded sheet of paper on the table. It was his prepared resignation already signed. Gas fluttered around the room. "I'm not negotiating," he said. "I'm stepping aside. The company will survive, but if we silence the truth, my soul won't." He turned and walked out, free-falling, yet strangely weightless. That evening, he sat opposite a seasoned journalist in a studio stripped of glamour. No teleprompter, no PR handler. Cameras rolled. Ethan closed his eyes for a beat, calling up Elena's smile, then spoke. "4 years ago, I thought my capacity to love died on a rain-slick highway. Then Grace Lopez asked for leftovers, and her baby smiled at mashed potatoes. Suddenly, I could breathe again." Cameras flashed red, broadcasting that confession to millions. Grace isn't a scandal. She is courage in threadbare shoes. Liam isn't a prop. He is hope in a blanket. Ethan's voice shook but never broke. "If protecting them costs me every share I own, I will still be richer than the day I founded this company." Viewers across 2 continents sat stunned. By midnight, the network's phone lines jammed with calls of support. Donations poured into shelters. Overnight, Grace became a symbol not of pity, but of resilient motherhood. For a few quiet weeks, life found a tentative rhythm. Ethan rented a modest apartment near Green Lake, white walls warmed by sunlit afternoons. Grace restarted online coding classes while Liam learned to pull himself upright, wobbling from sofa to coffee table like a small, determined sailor. Then Travis Carter knocked on the door. Grace froze when she saw him, taller, sharper, wearing entitlement like aftershave. "I want to meet my son," he said, gaze drifting over the tidy living room toward Liam's playpen. "He deserves a real father." "You had your chance," Grace answered, voice quivering but steady. "You told me to end the pregnancy. That was before he became valuable headline material," Travis replied, smirking. Grace's knees threatened to buckle, but footsteps sounded behind her. Ethan stepped into view, sleeves rolled, eyes calm as ice on a lake. "Real fathers don't arrive when the cameras do," Ethan said. "They arrive when the fever spikes at 2 a.m. Travis laughed. "Your money won't change biology." "No," Ethan agreed, "but love changes destiny." He handed Travis a thick envelope. Inside was a cease and desist order, notarized affidavits and pages detailing Travis's abandonment. "You were never on the birth certificate, but a judge will still ask whether your involvement serves the child's welfare. You think headlines help your case, but they spotlight every mistake you made. Walk away." Travis's swagger flickered. He crumpled the papers, tossed them aside, and left without another word. Grace exhaled a shudder she'd held since the knock. 2 months later, Ethan knelt in a courthouse hallway eye level with Liam. "I'm going to sign something," he whispered, "so I can be your dad forever, all right?" Liam offered a gummy grin, the exact smile that had started everything. The adoption hearing was brief. The judge looked over the paperwork, then at Ethan's steady gaze, and Grace's trembling hands clasped in gratitude. A single tap of the gavel made their patchwork trio a legal family. Outside, fresh snow dusted the courthouse steps, and the world felt bright enough to start again. Spring arrived early in Seattle. On a Saturday afternoon, Ethan guided Grace beneath an old oak in Green Lake Park. Friends and a few neighbors formed a small circle. Liam, now toddling confidently, wore a navy vest and clutched a velvet ring box as though it were made of clouds. Ethan turned to Grace, gathering every scar and miracle that had shaped them. "I've owned penthouses and patents," he began, voice low against the rustle of new leaves. "None of it filled the empty seat across my dinner table, until you sat there feeding hope to a child with a plastic spoon." Grace's eyes brimmed. She opened the box herself, revealing a simple band-gold, unadorned eternal. "Yes," she whispered before he could ask, pulling him into laughter and tears at once. Liam squealed and tugged at Ethan's trouser leg. Ethan scooped him up so their first kiss as fiancé happened, with a toddler sandwiched joyously between them. After the ceremony, Grace noticed an envelope tucked beneath the picnic basket. Inside was a charter for the Sunshine Fund. Ethan had sold 5% of his shares in Blake Innovations, enough to seed scholarships for homeless young mothers statewide. Grace pressed the document to her heart, tears streaking her new bride grin. The sky gloamed into rose and indigo. Their small party dispersed, but Ethan, Grace, and Liam stayed until twilight painted the lake silver. Grace hummed "You Are My Sunshine," and Liam sang the only word he knew, "Daddy," while Ethan spun them both under the branches, dizzy with a happiness he once thought impossible. Now it's your turn to step into the story's light. Would you have risked your career to defend someone the world was eager to misunderstand? Can a broken heart truly find a second beginning because of a stranger's single act of courage? How do you feel about the journey Ethan, Grace, and little Liam traveled? Comment number 3 if the ending warmed your heart, number 1 if it left you wanting more, and number 2 if you felt somewhere in between. Tell us where you're watching from, and remember to tap the heart and share this video so the next story finds the people who need it most.